A service of KIBMradio.com, the Internet's home for an all-old-time radio.
Unto Moses, saying, Command the children of Israel that they bring unto thee pure oil olive beaten for the light, to cause the lamps to burn continually in the tabernacle of the congregation. And it shall be a statute forever in your generations.
The Eternal Light. The National Broadcasting Company and its affiliated independent stations make free time available to present The Eternal Light, a program which comes to you under the auspices of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. Today's program, Green Thumb in the City, was written by Ernest Kenoy and was based upon Little Aliens and Little Citizens by Myra Kelly.
I bought a second-hand book yesterday. It only cost 19 cents because the binding was torn and a few pages were missing. The pages are yellow now, and the illustrations are a little old-fashioned. It was published in 1910. But that book was written by Myra Kelly, and she was my first teacher in America. You don't see her books much nowadays, even though Miss Kelly got a letter from Teddy Roosevelt himself saying how much they liked her stories in the White House. But I remember them, and I remember Miss Kelly. Because in her first reader class, I changed from an alien in a new world, from a little immigrant to an American. We lived on Monroe Street, on the east side of New York, and everything was strange and frightening because we had come out of Russia only 6 months before. The faces, the language, the sounds of the street were all new, and therefore strange, and therefore terrifying. One day, when I was 7 years old, my mother washed me till my knees and elbows were rubbed raw. Then she pinned my shirt to my short, tight knickers and towed me through the crowded streets to the yawning doorway of Public School 147.
All right, ladies. Please, we'll register all the children. Please, ladies, every child will get to school.
Somehow or other, every child got straightened out, except me. My mother went away because she could sew 100 buttonholes in an hour, and for 100 buttonholes she got 5 cents. She had no time to wait while the mills of the Board of Education ground small enough to catch me. So there I stood, all alone in the big empty room, and through the half-opened window I could hear the sweet sounds of freedom filter up from Houston Street. Slowly, I felt the tentacles of education closing down around my soul. And then, to add the final straw to my misery, around the corner came the sweet, tantalizing sound of a street piano wending its way through the pushcarts. And as it turned the corner, I saw my customary place behind it usurped by a small girl who danced to the music with wild abandon. This last catastrophe was too much, and I dissolved into hopeless tears.
That's all right. I think I found it. Hello. Are you Morris Mogilevsky?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I think you're supposed to be in my class. I'm Miss Kelly. Oh, is it that bad? Here. Now, what is it?
I got afraid. I ate so big, and I don't know where my mama is.
Oh, is that it?
I I got afraid over you.
Over me? Don't you want to be in my first reader class? Now, Morris, listen to me. If you'll come along to room 18, you can be a monitor.
A what?
A monitor. I need a monitor for the goldfish bowl.
Fishes? From gold?
That's right, Morris. Now dry those tears and come along to room 18.
Are you the new boy? Uh-huh. I'm Sadie Gonorowski. Hey, teacher, pretty? Her apron's from silk. She's all right. And is she fierce for clean hands? Honest, she keeps soap special. Soap? Just for washing hands? Sure. I'll teach her something special. I'm the monitor of the pencil point. I keep all teachers' pencils sharpened. That's nothing. I'm monitor of the goldfish bowl. You a monitor already? A greenhorn like you? I ain't no greenhorn. I come out of Russia already 6 months. Gee, a monitor the first day already. Teacher must have awful loving feelings with you. Gee.
And so on my first day in school, I joined the official cabinet of room 18. My portfolio, the goldfish bowl. We were the privileged few of the first reader class. For after 3 o'clock, when the ordinary common grade scholars had to leave the building, we could stay with teacher to discharge our duties. Conchetta Aiello, monitor of the window box, would prune each feeble leaf tenderly, and Sadie Gonorowski would sharpen each pencil to a murderous point. Once the principal came in at 3:30, just as Conchetta spilled a spoonful of humus on the floor.
Miss Kelly, I've meant to speak to you about these botanical exhibits.
Yes, Mr. Alden?
You know they do detract from the uniform look of our classrooms.
Oh, I know that, Mr. Alden, but my curriculum extract does say to cultivate the appreciation of natural phenomena and beauty.
Yes, of course. Well, the regular series of memory gems for recitation.
Mr. Alden, I'm afraid it doesn't mean much to these children to memorize a poem about a skylark when the only birds they know about are dead chickens and the stork.
Monica, look over that pigtail!
And autumn leaves are fairly scarce on Charleston Street.
But surely, Miss Kelly, Central Park...
Mr. Alden, it takes 10 cents car fare to get to Central Park. And that's close to what these children spend for food for a whole day. Conchetta's window boxes are as close as these babies can get to realizing what nature is.
Oh, surely you're exaggerating, Miss Kelly.
You're new in this district, Mr. Alden. Sadie? Sadie?
Yes, teacher, ma'am.
Sadie, do you know what the country is?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Uh-huh.
What is it, dear?
The country is the fresh air fund. They take you there when you ain't so healthy. And sometimes you don't come back. I went to Central Park once, Teach. I'm seeing a lake, a water lake, and a bird with a rubber neck. I had Nancy had a bird. Did it have a rubber neck? Nah. It sat all day in a cage and scupped.
Scupped?
Sure. Scupped back and fro.
It's a local word, Mr. Alden. The bird swung back and fro.
Sure. Scupped.
Oh.
Birds could be awful stylish for hats. Awful stylish and polite. I mean the feathers.
You see, Mr. Alden, it doesn't do much good to talk about fields and cows when these children often have never tasted milk. No. Conchetta's window boxes and Morris's goldfish are the most important thing I can teach these youngsters.
Look out, Sophie, you fell the water.
They'll learn how to read and count and march around the room. But if I can teach them that the world has something more for them than tenements and sweatshop homework at nights, then they... What is it, Sadie? Why are you tugging at my apron?
Teacher, ma'am, I'm all through with the pencil point. They're real fierce sharp.
Oh, that's fine, Sadie.
Now can I stay and help Conchetta with the window boxes? She promised to find me a crawly bug. A real live one.
You see, Miss Kelly was of the garden school in education. She thought of the children as growing plants, knowledge as water, and her part in the scheme to understudy the sun and coax the plants to absorb water. Mr. Alden, the principal, was of the carpenter school. He held that facts were straight and hard, minds not quite so hard, and the teacher's job to chip and chisel the minds so that the facts could be nailed on them. Then one day, near the end of the term, Miss Kelly was lecturing on a subject dear to her heart, the use of soap and water, and her insistence on the close union between such garments as were meant to be united.
You see, nice boys and girls always have their shirts tucked into their trousers. And little girls always...
No.
Nice little girls always... No. I seem to be interrupting Morris and Sadie. Now, what were you whispering about, Morris?
She made a snoot on me, Teacher Ma'am.
A what?
A snoot, with her fingers on her nose like this.
Oh, yes. All right, Morris.
It was a real fierce snoot. I had a friend.
All right, Morris. Now, Sadie?
Morris wasn't polite with me. I asked him with a please.
You asked him what with a please?
A safety pin for my ribbon.
You wanted to borrow Morris's pin?
That's right, Teacher Ma'am. But he ain't so polite. But, Teacher, it's all I got holding me up. If I give Sadie my pin, it wouldn't be so polite either.
It was in mid-morning recess that day that I was introduced to another mystery of America. We were in the schoolyard, and I was standing next to Sadie Gonorowski, who was skipping rope at a madcap pace.
Hello, Ma. Have you got yours? My what? Present from Miss Kelly. It's promotion day. What's that? Oh, I'm not sure, but on promotion day, it's polite to give teacher a present. My big sister told me. I didn't hear. You ain't got no present? I didn't know. Oh, that ain't so polite. Don't you like Miss Kelly? Morris? Morris, wait a minute. Where are you going? You'll be late for school.
The words of Sadie Gonorowski ate into my heart, and I ran homewards, taking the 5 flights up to our house at a dead run, bursting in on my mother, who sat, as I always remembered her, knee-deep in sewing, a garment in her hands. But there was no money for perfume, soap, or candlesticks, for my father had been laid off, and the price of buttonholes sewed had gone down to 4 cents a hundred. There was no money in my house for a promotion day present for my teacher. When I got back to room 18, the promotion day season was in full swing. Miss Kelly's desk was piled high, and the presence of cake on cake of fragrant soap was urgently perceptible. Teacher's hair was laden down with imitation tortoiseshell combs, and her blouse glittered with campaign buttons of American celebrities, starting with James G. Blaine and William Jennings Bryan, and ending with our current hero, Teddy Roosevelt.
Children, I don't know what to say, really. I had no idea, and the present is so lovely. I want to thank all of you. Isidore Applebaum for the beautiful calendar, and Sadie Gonorowski for the soap.
You in good health, Teacher.
Oh, that's a lovely thought, Sadie. Now, I want to thank you all again, children, all of you. I'm sure no other teacher in the world has so much soap.
And perfume.
And perfume. I'm sure of that.
But promotion day meant more than soap and perfume, for it was on that day that the Honorable Tim O'Shea, Assistant Superintendent of Schools, made his tour of inspection.
Now, you're not to be nervous, Miss Kelly.
Of course not, Mr. Alden.
You know, of course, that your license to teach depends on Mr. O'Shea's recommendation, but there's no need to be at all nervous. No need.
Yes, sir.
He just finished yesterday at the Broome Street School.
He did?
Yes. 5 dismissals, 9 cases of nervous exhaustion, and an epidemic of hysteria. But there's no need to be nervous, Miss Kelly. No need at all.
Mr. Alden and the Honorable Mr. Tim O'Shea marched into our classroom at 2 o'clock and were seated in the chairs of honor.
Look, Sadie. The man with whiskers. It could be Teacher's Papa. It's company. He's sitting in the company chair.
Just go on with the lesson, Miss Kelly. Mr. Alden and I will observe.
Yes, sir. We were just going to have our afternoon march.
Uh-huh.
All right, children. Everybody stretch way up. Now, everyone all loosened up? Ready for the grand march.
Teacher, Miss Green, she told me to tell you Miss Roche was... She sent a note for you, teacher.
Later, Conchetta, the class is going to march.
May I see the note, Miss Kelly?
Thank
you. Gumshoe Tim is in the building. Green in a dead faint. She thinks she's fired. Pass the word. Thoughtful, but a little late.
Mr. O'Shea,
I'm sure Mr. O'Shea understands.
Of course. May I dictate an answer? Ready? Miss Green may come to. She's not fired. Yet. Signed O'Shea. All right, Miss Kelly, suppose we skip the marching. Can the children read?
Oh, yes. Yes, they can read. Children, readers out.
Morris, look at Teach. Oh, she's got a Fraid. A real fierce Fraid from the company with whiskers. Teacher wouldn't be with us no more. No. Sure, he's a superintendent. If he says no more teacher. Oh, no. That'd be awful.
All right, Morris. No more whispering.
Teacher, yes, ma'am. I tell you excuse.
What did he say?
Morris was apologizing.
Isn't he rather big to speak such broken English? You know, it's part of our duty to stamp out foreign dialects.
Oh, but Morris has been in America such a short time. Isn't that right, Morris?
Teacher, yes, ma'am. I comes out of Russia.
Well, I hope you're not spoiling them. Discipline, you know. Discipline. Well, now let's hear the children read.
One by one, we stood and read our line from the first reader. All went smoothly until teacher turned to write on the board. Then suddenly my heart stopped and then raced on. For as I looked at teacher, I saw I had a new and perilous duty to perform.
When somebody's clothes is wrong undone, it's polite to say excuse and tell it out.
Now Miss Kelly, who daily lectured us on the virtue of buttons and laces, now she had fallen victim to the stretch way up which preceded the marching. At first I hoped that someone else would see her danger and act. But no, my soul cried out with Hamlet's, "The time is out of joint, O cursed spite, that ever I was born to set it right."
Miss Kelly, that boy has his hand up.
Well, Morris, what is it?
But the mission was too great. What words can you use to mention ineffective safety pins to one's glass of fashion?
I think I'll sit down.
A dark shadow passed over Mr. O'Shea's face, and immediately the vision of Miss Kelly drummed out of the classroom flashed before my eyes. Only today she had warned us that only common little boys and girls come apart, and now the company with whiskers must be misjudging her.
Miss Kelly, that boy again.
Morris, dear, what is it? Please, Morris, tell me what you want.
Teacher,
Morris, if you're going to interrupt the reading lesson like this, I shall be quite angry.
Teacher, I tell you excuse. It's polite I tell you something, only I got afraid.
So you bother your teacher with this nonsense, huh? Out with it, boy. Come here.
Morris is a strange boy, Mr. O'Shea. I think it might be better not to press the point.
Oh? Very well. If you have no control over
Miss Kelly, I think you'd better let us hear what Morris has to say. Discipline, you know.
It's polite I tell you something, only I got afraid.
Morris, dear, afraid of what? Are you sick? Would you like to go home to your mother?
No, ma'am. I ain't sick. I tell you excuse.
Here, bring that boy to me. I'll show you how to manage refractory children. Now, Morris, will you tell me why you raised your hand?
I couldn't tell nothing out. I got afraid.
Nonsense. Come here, sir.
Teacher!
Dear, Morris, dear. I must ask you to leave him to me, Mr. O'Shea. You frightened the child until he can't breathe.
But
Really, Miss Kelly,
Please leave this to me. There, Morris. There now.
Teacher, I want to whisper with you in the ear.
Yes, Morris.
Teacher, I know it's polite I should tell something when my hand is up, only I had a fright over the company with whiskers. Teacher, man, it's like this. Your jumper's sticking out from between your dress, and you could please borrow my safety pin.
Oh, Morris. Morris. How could you, dear? How could you?
If I hadn't known that grown-ups, especially teachers, never cry, I might have thought then that tears shone in Miss Kelly's eyes. The principal, in the company with whiskers, looked solemn for a struggling moment, and then broke into laughter, loud and long, until the Honorable Tim was limp and moist. The children waited with anxiety, but when Miss Kelly contributed a warm smile, we decided it was some mysterious holiday, and we all went wild with laughter. Miss Kelly had passed her test, and somehow I felt that I had a part in her success. Now the great day was over. The large pile of wrappings from Miss Kelly's promotion day gifts had been carted off to the big wastebasket in the hall, and Teacher was staring in wonder at the tall pyramid of soap and perfume that had been erected on her desk. Presently, she began to painfully disentangle the saw-tooth combs that loving hands had embedded in her hair. And it was then that I approached her.
Teacher, ma'am.
Morris, I thought you were all gone.
I got something for you for promotion day.
Oh, now, Morris, dear, you shouldn't have troubled to get me a present. You and I are such good friends.
Teacher, yes, ma'am. I know you got a kind feeling for me, and I couldn't tell you even the kind feeling I got for you, so I should give you the present. Only I didn't have no soap, and my mama couldn't buy none by the store. But I got a real promotion present for you.
You have, Morris?
Teacher, ma'am, it's like this. I ain't so big, and all I know is my present ain't for boys. It's for ladies.
I don't quite...
See, yesterday my papa comes to the house and give my mama the present. And when she looks on it, she has an awful glad, and tears stands in her eyes. And she says, thanks, and she kisses my papa a kiss. My papa's real polite, so he says, you're welcome. And my mama, she sits and looks on the present, and cries because she has such a glad over it. And I didn't have no soap, so you could have the present.
But, Morris, did your mother say I might?
Teacher, no, ma'am. She don't know. But it's a present for ladies, and I didn't have no soap. It ain't for boys. And when she sees it, my mama kisses my papa a kiss. So I knew it must be a real good for ladies present. But...
Yes, Morris.
Well, you ain't never kissed me a kiss, and I seen how you kissed Sadie. I thought...
Oh, perhaps that isn't for boys either.
Teacher, yes, ma'am. It's for boys. It's polite you kisses me a kiss because it's a real for ladies present. Here it is.
This paper, Morris?
For you, teacher. I didn't have no soap, and I see my mama has such a glad over it. I knew it was a stylish for ladies present. Here, teacher, ma'am. It's for you, for promotion day.
My teacher kissed me then, and cried, I think. For the little bit of paper that I gave her, my present for ladies was a paid-in-full receipt for a month's rent for our room on the top floor of the Monroe Street tenement. That was promotion day in PS 147. And the next term, we found we had to move across the hall, away from the goldfish bowl, the window boxes, and Miss Kelly. We objected very strongly.
We don't know. No.
Here, children, what are you doing in my office?
We want to know why Miss Kelly wasn't promoted, too.
What?
Maybe she ain't so smart. It ain't fair. Joey was bad all trip, and now he gets to stay with Miss Kelly, and we gotta go away.
But Joey was left back.
We all want to be left back with Miss Kelly.
Oh, here now, we can't have this. Have any of you got any baby brothers or sisters?
Sure, I got two.
Well, then you know how hard it is to take care of them.
You're telling me. All the time, rock. You could go crazy.
That's just it. Well, we have to have our best teachers for the youngest children. Why, you're all grown up now.
We are?
Of course. And we need Miss Kelly to take care of the new first readers.
I suppose so. We couldn't be left back?
Oh, no. You can't be left back.
Well, it'll never be like the old days. Come on, Sadie, Concetta. There's nothing we can do. We're too old. We growed up.
And so the wisdom of age settled down on our small heads, and we left room 18 to make way for another batch of little immigrants swept in off the streets of the East Side. But we went forth from room 18 changed. Our tongue was smoother in the new language, our minds set in the open paths of our new country. Myra Kelly was our teacher. She brought the sun of learning and love to us in our narrow gutter playgrounds and rotted tenement homes. Transplanted from hate and sorrow in the old world, we took root and grew in the new soil, nurtured and cultivated by the lady with the green thumb.
If you would like a copy of today's script, please send your name and address with 10 cents to cover the cost of postage and handling to the Eternal Light, 3080 Broadway, New York 27, New York. Our Eternal Light drama today, Green Thumb in the City, was written by Ernest Kenoy and was based upon Little Aliens and Little Citizens by Myra Kelly. The music was composed by Morris Momorsky and conducted by Milton Catins. Cantor David Putterman sang the liturgical introduction. Featured as Miss Kelly was Virginia Payne, and Peter Capell was the narrator. The production was under the direction of Frank Papp. Free time to present the Eternal Light is made available by the National Broadcasting Company and its affiliated independent stations. This weekly program is presented under the auspices of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. This is NBC, the National Broadcasting Company.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Command the children of Israel that they bring unto thee pure oil olive beaten for the light, to cause the lamps to burn continually in the tabernacle of the congregation. And it shall be a statute forever in your generations.
The Eternal Light. The National Broadcasting Company and its affiliated independent stations make free time available to present The Eternal Light, a program which comes to you under the auspices of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. Today's program, Adventure in Time, was written by Sylvia Berger. La 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 la
4,000 miles in the direction from which the sun first circles toward your window, in the land of Israel, in the desert of Judea, near a sea called the Dead Sea, and a city called Jerusalem, more than 1 year ago, but not quite 2, this happened. That a number of men, knowing and unknowing, had a large and wondrous adventure in time. Knowing and unknowing, these were the men.
John C. Trevor, of the American School of Oriental Research, archaeologist.
Boutros Salmi, of St. Mark's Syrian Orthodox Convent in the old city of Jerusalem, priest.
Eliezer Lippur Sukenik, professor at the Hebrew University on Mount Scopus in the city of Jerusalem.
And
Ali Hassar, of the Bedouin tribe of Jamra in the land of Palestine. Life is hard for the Bedouin, but the desert is wide. The sun shines free. The stars are anybody's. I am ignorant. Man doesn't need the knowledge of letters to shout an order, and a camel will carry the load of even a poor man. On the day this happened, this thing that they talk about, we were on our way to Bethlehem with a cargo of dates and figs from the Jordan Valley. The day was like every other day in the wandering life of the desert, filled with toil and weariness. The sun was hot, the sand was like glass grinding in your teeth. Our feet dragged with the pull of many miles. When not too far away, we saw a cave. Our leader told us we could stop at the cave. We could stop and rest. The shade of a cave on a hot day. The cool wash of water from your water jar. The sweet curtain of sleep drawn against the burning, staring eye of the desert sun. But good luck comes only to those who don't need it. The cave we had found for our rest had fallen in. There wasn't room even for a flea to crawl under. But at the mouth of the cave, there was something. Something in the dry and crumbling earth. 11 jars. We saw 11 jars. And some were broken, and through the broken shards wrapped in the rotting cloth, we saw, plain as day, we saw... We took the jars to the great sheikh in Bethlehem. Men paid good money, we heard, for things like this.
They came to me on a hot day, a little over a year ago, clutching their broken jars and their handful of worm-eaten scrolls of dirty leather.
We found it in the cave, Your Excellence. High on the cliffs where the Wadi empties into the Dead Sea, there's a cave.
Why did you bring these to me?
Oh, we thought...
Is it a gift you wanted to make to your sheik?
Your Excellence, we are poor people. Whatever we own, we have earned with the sweat of our own skin, the weariness of our own feet.
These old shreds of time-burnt leather are of no use to me.
But there is writing on them.
The writing is not Muslim.
Not Muslim?
Anyone can see it's not Muslim. Take it to someone who's interested in such things. Take it to the Hebrew University on Mount Scopus.
The Hebrew University?
Or wait. Why, of course. Estrangolo-Syriac.
Your Excellence.
Anyone can see it's Estrangolo-Syriac. Take it to the Syrian convent. Maybe they'll buy it from you.
11
Father Boutros Salmi of St. Mark's Syrian convent in the old city of Jerusalem. The world is old, and there were many here before us. Here in the convent library I sit, cataloging the worn book, the broken plate, the discarded coin, the rag of a faded sleeve which had been left on earth when the other tenants moved on elsewhere. Here in the library I sit over the books, the coins, the faded cloth, until the years fold away like the petals of our scarlet tulips, and the roads around me to Gaza, to Bethlehem, to Beersheba, with the buses and the men in metal helmets and the men bearing guns, melt away in the sun, and the cry of battle is silenced, and I hear the voices of other men who travel these very roads, but in other times.
The vision of Isaiah, the son of Amos, which he saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah.
There have been men here on earth before us. But who were they and what were they? Were they glad to see the sun rise in the morning, or were their days empty of comfort and their nights sharp with trouble? Who were their friends? And who were their enemies? Here in the library of the convent, I, Father Boutros Salmi, turn the coin this way and that way, study the weave of the ragged sleeve, give myself to the single stroke of a single letter on the fragment of a nameless shred of parchment, and the voices rise up and meddle in my ears.
Hear, O heavens, and give ear, O earth, for the Lord hath spoken. I have nourished and brought up children, and they have rebelled against me.
But whose voices are these? Where on the fragment of parchment does it say whose voices are these?
Excuse me, Reverend Father.
Yes?
There are 2 Arabs outside.
What do they want?
They say they have some ancient writings for you. In our tongue, they say.
Show them in. Humbly they scrape their feet on the floor as they come in. Their robes are dusty from the desert sands, their eyes already wearied of the unfamiliar twilight of the library. In their hands they bear scrolls.
We found them in the desert.
May I look at them?
In a cave in the desert, high on a cliff above the water. Our sheikh said you would give us money for them.
There are 4 scrolls, brittle with centuries, worn with time and the touch of many hands rolling and unrolling. Is this how you found them in the cave in the desert?
We found them in jars.
You have the jars?
The jars that were not broken we used to carry water.
How many hundreds of years ago? And who was the potter? And where was the clay dug to shape the jars in which these men now in my library carry their water? Is this how they lay in the jars, just like this?
They were wrapped in cloth.
You have the cloth?
We ripped it off.
I stare at the shred of faded leather. And I, Father Boutros of St. Mark's Orthodox Syrian convent, hear the clamoring of voices. But these are not men to hear voices. They want to be rid of the worm-eaten leather. They want to escape from the library. They want to go back into the desert sun, laden with the sweet burden of money.
We thought 200 pounds.
They thought 200 pounds. And surely it is enough for a worm-eaten scroll scratched with markings so blind that even a sheik cannot decipher them, so deaf that no ear can hear the voices behind them. But when they have closed their hands upon the money and gone back to the desert where the camel at his fodder makes more sense than an old priest paying 200 pounds for a few scrolls of withered leather, then dimly the voices start again, the voices of other men who travel these roads before us, and I, Boutros Salmi, sit and listen.
Whose are these voices? What is the tongue they speak?
I have seen such letters somewhere, yet they escape me. Like something seen under water. They are familiar, yet they escape me. and I go to the telephone.
I, John C. Trevor, archaeologist with the American School of Oriental Research in Jerusalem, was going over the report on my last project in the Holy Land when the phone call came in. What sort of project? What sort of project would a man like me be involved in? We're the fellows you see in the feature section of your newspaper, running about in pith helmets and foolish-looking shorts, digging up holes in some improbable spot in some out-of-the-way desert. Archaeology, the study of the material relics of humanity's past, the schoolbooks say. Anyway, that's the sort of business I was involved in when Omar, our cook, came in.
Mr. Trevor.
Omar, excuse me, I must have been wool gathering. Were you saying something?
There is a telephone call.
I'll take it. Rather hoping I'd be left alone today. Did they give their name?
Father Boutros Salmi, sir, of the Syrian convent. He said you will be very glad to talk with him.
If I was glad to talk with Father Boutros, my pleasure was not unmixed. The climax of Father Boutros' conversation was an invitation to call on him at the convent. And being a man of caution and common sense, I knew that was impossible. No one who cared to see the sun rise the next day ventured into the old city of Jerusalem anymore that time. But being an archaeologist who dug holes in improbable places, in out-of-the-way deserts, and looked for the story of his fathers in the footprints on a 1,000-year-old rock, I accepted. And the very next day, a day cool and brisk, clear, day I shall never forget, I was in a taxi heading for the Jaffa Gate. That is, I was heading for the Jaffa Gate till the driver ruminated on the address a while. Then, in the middle of a dusty road between the new city of Jerusalem and the old, the car came to a grinding stop.
I don't go inside the gates of the old city.
But there's no reason why you can't take me inside. I'm not at war with the Arabs or the Jews. I'm a neutral.
Not inside. I'll take you as far as the Jaffa Gate. That's as far as I'll take you, but not inside.
Not inside. Well, not inside. If I were a man of sense, I'd come to Palestine to sell neckties or toothpaste. I'd have turned back and called it a day. But an archaeologist, looking for secrets in the sands of time... All right, driver. As far as the Jaffa Gate. And we said goodbye at the Jaffa Gate. A young Arab, bristling with arms. Where was my pass? Here it is, properly stamped and counterstamped. Apparently he didn't like the looks of my pass. Maybe he didn't like my looks. But just as I was seriously considering turning right back to where I'd started from, another Arab came out, looked over my pass, looked me over, and then he gave the signal for me to go through. And now, I was inside the walls of the old city, picking my way through the crooked, narrow streets, fighting for room with droves of sheep and goats that were being herded home by small boys. Then I was at the entrance to the Syrian Orthodox convent of St. Mark, and waiting for me was Father Boutros Salmi.
We called you, Mr. Trevor, because we thought you would like to see some scrolls that have just been brought to us.
I should.
Here at the convent, we have been acquainted with many ancient manuscripts.
I'm aware of that.
I myself have seen the first complete manuscript of the Bible in Hebrew. With my own eyes, I have seen it.
1,200 years old.
I know the writing of the ancient Hebrews. I've read their manuscripts, and I know their writing, but this...
This?
This is Hebrew writing, but I cannot read it. I have never seen this kind of writing. Though I know it is Hebrew, I would stake my life it is Hebrew. Yet I have never seen it before in my life.
I looked into the face of Father Boutros, and it seemed to me that I saw an urgency, a hunger, a thrill of excitement that's known only to the hunter when he hears his quarry in the brush, or to the scientist in the first faint dawn of a new discovery. That's what I thought I saw in the gentle eyes of Father Boutros. Or was it my own hunger, urgency, the thrill of the archaeologist that I saw reflected in his eyes? May I see the scrolls?
I have them here.
Slowly, carefully, he laid before me 4 scrolls. 1, 2, 3, 4. I touched one.
You may unroll it.
Carefully, lest it fall apart in my trembling fingers, I unrolled the scroll. I could hardly believe what I saw. The work of the greatest lyric prophet, a prophet of sublime poetry. 17 sheets of carefully prepared skins sewed together. Every sheet 10.25 inches high, 23.75 feet long. Long ago, very long ago, a cover had been sewed around the scroll, but the cover was gone. Had the Bedouins torn away the cover in the cave? We'd never know. But on the right-hand edge of the first column of the scroll were needle holes and pieces of thread still remaining. When were these sheets of withered leather sewed together? Whose were the hands? And what were the times?
I, Eliezer Lippur Sukenik, of the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. It was a Monday morning when I was called by my friend, the dealer in antiquities. But the time was not right in Palestine for the meeting of friends. And he, a Muslim, said the man then in charge, was not to leave the Muslim sector, and I, a Jew, I was not to leave the Jewish sector. And so we met on an open road across the barrier between the Muslim sector and the Jewish sector, and the distance between us was 6 feet, 5 at the least.
Can you see what I'm holding in my hand?
A shred of old leather.
Can you see the writing?
I can see it quite plainly.
Have you ever seen writing like this before?
I've seen such writing scratched on slabs of stone, but until now I've not seen such writing written with a pen on parchment.
Then the writing is old.
The writing is very old.
Can you read the writing?
And the time was not right in Palestine, but I did it nonetheless. I left the sector I was forbidden to leave. I went to the place where they waited with the manuscripts.
You can read this writing?
I should like to take these back with me, if you will permit me, for 3 days. For 2 days and 1 night. The writing was old. Yes, it was old. In my youth, I'd thrilled to the story of the Nash Papyrus, the fragment of a Hebrew Bible manuscript older than any in the world. But this writing, what was this writing? And for 2 days, and on the 3rd night, I studied the writing. And then I saw that here was a letter, and another letter, and now a word. And the words were fitting together. And behind the words rang voices. I am sort of them that ask not for me. I am
found of them that sought me not. I said, behold me. Behold me unto a nation that was not called by my name.
The book of Isaiah, this worm-eaten leather scroll, this parchment eaten by the teeth of time, found in a dusty cave beside the salt and heavy waters of the Dead Sea. How old was it? When did they live, the scribes who'd carefully and beautifully shaped these letters with their pointed reeds, who wrote in their neat corrections, with their ink made of soot, strengthened with gall nuts?
And it came to pass in the days of Ahaz, the son of Jotham, the son of Uzziah, king of Judah, that Rezin, the king of Syria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, king of Israel, went up toward Jerusalem to war against it, but could not prevail against it.
How many years ago did they sit in the shadow of their sun-bleached tents, sewing together the skins of animals to make their scrolls? And why did they wrap the scrolls in cloth? And why did they seal the cloth with pitch? And why did they put the scrolls in a jar? And why did they hide the jars in a cave? And where did they flee? And when? And why? And from whom? Sleep came hard to me that night. And then, when I knew what it was I saw before me, from great excitement, I ran out into the street. Mordecai! And the first man I met was the man I had to tell the news to. Listen, there's wonderful news. The oldest Hebrew manuscript.
The United Nations has voted...
What? What did you say?
On my radio. The United Nations has just voted for the establishment of Israel.
But this is what they said.
Who, Eliezer?
2,200 years ago. In the scrolls, Mordecai. Here were the voices of Israel. Here sealed in jars and filed in its warm earth were the teachings of men who had walked the world before us. And what they taught was righteousness in the sight of God, fear of evil, pleasure in goodness, the clean heart, and the hand open in honesty. Reading the careful writing on the old browned leather, I heard the voice of Israel. And I thought, this land belongs to the men of the Word of God.
The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because the Lord hath anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek. He hath sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to them that are bound. Rejoice ye with Jerusalem, and be glad with her, all ye that love her. For thus saith the Lord.
If you would like a copy of today's script, please send your name and address with 10 cents to cover the cost of postage and handling to the Eternal Light, 3080 Broadway, New York 27, New York. And now we take pleasure in presenting Dr. W.F. Albright, W.W. Spence Professor of Semitic Languages at Johns Hopkins University. Dr. Albright will speak from Baltimore.
A year ago last month, I received an airmail letter from Dr. John C. Trevor, then acting director of the American School of Oriental Research in Jerusalem. In this letter, Dr. Trevor enclosed photographic prints of a manuscript of the prophet Isaiah, acquired by the Syrian monastery of St. Mark in Jerusalem. How my eyes bulged as I looked through a lens and recognized Hebrew writing of the Maccabean age, about 2,100 years ago. That spring, details about the Isaiah scroll and the other documents included in this extraordinary find continued to arrive through press releases and private letters. Now publication has begun. Professor E.L. Sukenik of the Hebrew University in Jerusalem is describing the contents of the documents which he purchased, while Professor Miller Burroughs of Yale University, aided by Doctors Trevor and Brownlee, has undertaken the publication of the remaining scrolls. When we realize that the scroll of Isaiah was written a good 1,100 years before the oldest previously known scroll of the Hebrew Bible, its uniqueness becomes clear. Such a discovery seemed incredible to many authorities, but during the past few weeks, any possible doubt about the age and authenticity of the documents has been removed. 3 eminent archaeologists, an Englishman, a Frenchman, and an American, have cleared the cave where Bedouin discovered the scrolls. In the cave they found typical pottery from the last 2 centuries before the Christian era, as well as many bits of parchment and papyrus with the same kind of writing as is found on the scrolls. The remaining documents are not quite so sensational, but they are even more important from an historical point of view. Some of them are written in Hebrew, others in the Aramaic, which was employed in the days of the New Testament and the last century of the Second Temple. Their value for our knowledge of early Judaism and Christianity is very great. Recently, the Syrian Archbishop, His Grace Athanasius Yeshua Samuel, and Professor E.L. Sukenik have brought their precious scrolls to this country for skilled treatment by museum specialists. It is no accident, but one of the normal events of our time, that these priceless heirlooms of man's spiritual life should now find security in our own land while awaiting publication for the benefit of all mankind.
Our Eternal Light drama today, Adventure in Time, was written by Sylvia Berger. The music was composed by Morris Momorsky and conducted by Milton Catons. Cantor David Putterman sang the liturgical introduction. In today's cast were Alexander Scorby, John McGovern, Bernard Lenrow, Arnold Moss, Roger DeKoven, Joe Boland, Robert Harris, Dan Ocko, and Delmar Nutzman. The production was under the direction of Frank Papp. Free time to present the Eternal Light is made available by the National Broadcasting Company and its affiliated independent stations. This weekly program is presented under the auspices of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. This is NBC, the National Broadcasting Company.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Command the children of Israel that they bring unto thee pure oil olive, beaten for the light, to cause the lamps to burn continually in the tabernacle of the congregation. And it shall be a statute forever in your generations.
The Eternal Light. The National Broadcasting Company and its affiliated independent stations make free time available to present The Eternal Light, a program which comes to you under the auspices of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. Today's story, The Slave, was written by Sigmund Miller and is presented in commemoration of Passover.
And this happened far away and long ago, in the ancient province of Goshen, in the rich land of Egypt. And it came about in a moment when history trembled. And in this time there lived a man by the name of Yerakam. Now Yerakam's people were in the fiery crucible of revolt, preparing to leave the land of slavery and seek independence in a land of their own. But Yerakam cared for naught save profitable trade, and he pursued profit.
Judah, please let me in. Let me in. Open the door, Judah.
I'm coming. Stop breaking my door down.
Oh, it's you, Yerakam.
A disaster has happened. A disaster.
Are the soldiers inside our gates again?
It's lost. All lost.
Come in. Now, calm yourself and tell me, what disaster is now befallen?
The streets of Goshen are running red.
Are we being attacked again?
No, I bought 12 skins of wine, and they came and slashed the skins so that the streets are red.
Oh. Who was it that slashed the skins?
It was the constables.
Why did they pour out your wine?
Well, they said it was sour and contaminated.
It serves you right.
Well, not only do they destroy my wine, but they're going to fine me 2 talents of silver. If I cannot pay, they will chain me to an oar for the rest of my life. I have no money. What will I do?
It serves you right, Yerakam. I have no pity for you.
Please, Judah, you're a wealthy man. Let me have the silver, please.
And how do you propose to pay me back?
I will earn it. I will work as a laborer.
You cannot earn 2 talents. That's beyond the measure of a laborer. Even so, I do not like your ways, Yerakam, and I do not especially care to help you.
Please, no, don't walk away from me. You must help me. I'll work for you. I'll sell myself to you. I'll be your slave.
I do not need a slave.
I'll carry your things, clean your house, serve you day and night. Please, Judah, take me as your slave. I must have the 2 talents of silver by morning.
Oh, all right, Yerakam. I don't relish you even as a slave, but nevertheless I'll give you the money. I don't think you'll need to serve me for life. Soon our people will leave Egypt, and Moses is preparing new laws about slavery, in which a slave is given his freedom in the 7th year. But that remains in the future.
Yes, Master. I will serve you faithfully. You will not regret buying me.
And so it came to pass that Yerakam became Judah's slave. Yerakam was a useful and diligent slave. He served Judah well, and Judah never regretted his purchase. And Judah was a man who stood high among the leaders of Israel. His voice was heard often in the councils of the elders, as they discussed and planned the migration out of Egypt. Yerakam came and went from these councils in company of his master, so that among other slaves he gained importance. The other slaves plied him with questions about the coming exodus.
Tell us, Yerakam, what about our people leaving Pharaoh's land?
I don't know, Haran.
But what do they say in the council?
They talk in the councils. They often talk far into the night.
What do they say? Surely they talk about our liberation.
I don't know. I don't listen. If we'll be liberated, well, then we'll be liberated. If not, we'll stay here. Why should I listen?
You're a liar, Yerakam. I say to you straight out, you are a liar. You will not tell us.
If I remembered, I would tell you. Why should I keep this from you?
You mean you really aren't interested?
Let others concern themselves with such problems. As for me, I concern myself with my own affairs.
Have you seen Moses?
Yes, I've seen him.
Have you heard him speak?
I can't remember.
He can't remember. He can only remember how to wash his master's feet and how to labor like a beast.
All right, then listen to this. I overheard that Moses is planning a law about slaves. Slaves will be given their everlasting freedom after serving 6 years. This will soon become a law of Israel.
The slave Yerakam was not stupid, but these were the principles by which he lived. While the whole population of Goshen did writhe under the lash of Pharaoh Meneptah, while they did seethe with the struggle for liberation, the slave Yerakam remained untroubled. And though the days and nights echoed with lamentations, speeches, and exhortations, Yerakam cared not. He cared only about his duties as a slave to Judah, and also about a certain Midianite woman whom he did chance to meet frequently at the well at the outskirts of Goshen. Her name was Zillah. She was comely, and she was shy.
We meet here often, sweet maiden. What is your name?
Zillah.
That is a pretty name. As pretty as you are well-formed.
Oh, you're kind to say so.
A well-formed body is nothing to be ashamed of.
I am not ashamed.
My name is Yerakam.
I know your name.
Oh.
You were a slave to Judah,
The man who talks with Moses and Aaron.
He picked me above all the others to be his slave and his companion. I'm well treated and well provided for. With whom do you live, Zillah?
With my father and 6 brothers and sisters.
Has your father set a price for you, Zillah?
I don't know.
Here, let me draw the water. You are indeed fair, sweet Zillah. Master, I've been a good servant to you, have I not?
What is it you want, Yerrican?
Master, I need 6 silver pieces.
Are you in debt again?
I'm in debt to my heart. I love a maiden.
Oh. Who is she?
Her name is Zillah. She's a Midianite. She's comely and gentle. For 6 silver pieces, you will gain yourself another slave, and I a wife. I will be a far happier slave, and I will do the work of 2 men.
I want to see this woman. Bring her here to me.
She's outside, Master.
Oh, you come well prepared. Did you bring a bag to hold the silver pieces?
I'll bring her in at once. Master, here is Zillah.
Come in, Zillah. Do you want to marry Yerrican?
Oh, yes, she does. She's already told me so many times.
Let her speak. Tell me, Zillah, do you want to marry him?
Yes, Master Judah.
I'm not your master, not yet. Does your father object to your marrying a slave?
All he wants is the silver. He doesn't care who she marries.
I think it is wrong to marry a slave, Zillah. I think it is wrong deliberately to enslave yourself. Don't you want to think it over?
No, she doesn't.
Let her speak.
We are poor. Yerrican will not be a slave forever. He's told me that Moses is planning a law which will give a slave his freedom in the 7th year. Is that so, Master Judah?
Yes, it is not yet a law, but as soon as we leave Pharaoh's land, it will be. Well, you have my permission to marry, and I will pay your father the 6 pieces of silver.
Thank you, Master. You are indeed the kindest master of all.
Yerrican, where are you?
Here I am, Master Judah.
Good news, Yerrican, good news. We're going to leave. It's settled at last.
Oh? When do we leave, Master?
In 3 days, we leave Goshen and Pharaoh Meneptah's Egypt forever. Before evil Meneptah came to power, Egypt was a good and kindly land, but now we cannot stay any longer. We leave with our heads high, a free people.
Where are we going to go?
Where? Don't you know, Yerrican?
I was busy with my duties.
Our great leader, Moses, has told us that the Lord has promised us a land of milk and honey.
Where may this land be, Master?
It is not said, but I hear that it is the land of Canaan. But you don't seem to be overjoyed at the news, Yerrican.
I am overjoyed, Master.
Perhaps it's all the same to you because you're a slave. Is that so?
Yes, Master.
As soon as we leave the land, the law of Moses will be our law. You will only need serve me 6 years, and then you'll be a freedman.
Yes, Master Judah.
Well, stop saying yes, Master, to me and say something else.
Wherever you go, I will follow and serve you.
That's very loyal, but I do not feel that you have made yourself a part of this tremendous thing that is happening to our people.
Yes, Master.
You seem loath to leave. Moses has said that those who would stay behind be permitted to do so. I will release you from bondage.
I will go with you.
Not with me, but with us. And if you would join with us, you must show some spirit.
The great exodus began. And so it came to pass that the Israelites marched out of Goshen by tribes, as the silent and wonder-struck Egyptians stood by and watched them. For behold, they marched in order. And in the heart of every Israelite surged a wild feeling of excitement and exultation, like a prisoner being given his freedom. But Yerrican felt that all this was a big mistake. Yet he said naught to anyone, not even his wife. But he thought that to give up all the soft, green, fertile lands of Goshen for the hot, lifeless sands of the Sinai desert was madness. But he labored hard, taking care of the overburdened donkeys and seeing to Judah's comforts. Yerrican worked and sweated like a beast in the field.
And now the Israelites were encamped at an oasis in the desert, beyond the Red Sea. And then the congregation of the children was called together.
Hear, O children of Israel, the words of the Lord of Israel, which thou shalt set before you. If thou buy a servant, he shall serve thee 6 years, and on the 7th he shall go out free. If his master have given him a wife, and she have borne him sons or daughters, the wife and the children shall be her master's, and he shall go out by himself. And if the servant...
And so, it became a law.
Greetings, Yeracom.
Greetings.
Yeracom is indeed a lucky man. In 3 weeks he will be a free man according to the new law, won't you, Yeracom?
I haven't counted the days.
Yeracom, what do you intend to do as soon as you become a freedman?
I haven't thought about it.
But you must. It's only 3 weeks away.
I know what he plans to do. He will lie in the sun and do nothing for a long time. Zilla will wait on him, and he will live like a pharaoh, won't you, Yeracom?
What I plan to do is my own affair.
Oh, we are your friends, Yeracom. We mean you no harm.
You hear the roar of the lion? These savage beasts have become our only neighbors. In Goshen, at least, we had human beings for neighbors.
I prefer these beasts to human beasts any time. The lions have hurt us little. The Egyptians have killed us by the thousands.
Perhaps Yeracom loves the feel of an Egyptian lash on his back. It stimulates his blood.
I think he prefers being a slave. Isn't that so, Yeracom?
What's so wonderful about being a freedman? You think you'll no longer have to work? Judah is a kindly master. Will I find an employer as kind? Judah has a fatherly interest in me and my wife and my son. Will an employer be as interested? If I become a freedman, I'll be far worse off than ever. Then I'll have to worry about my family and my livelihood. Working for Judah, I shall be secure the rest of my days. What do you say to that, Harry?
I just know that it's better to be free than a slave.
Yeracom.
What do you want, Zilla?
Oh, there's only one more.
One more what?
Week.
Well, what about it?
Judah will set you free in a week.
This is no affair of yours.
We are husband and wife. Whatever happens to you also concerns me.
Mind your own duties. Nothing concerns you but your work.
But we have to plan. Where are we going to live after next week?
You'll not stop plaguing me until I take the rod to you, huh?
I must know because of our son.
Now will you keep quiet? Perhaps now you'll stop asking foolish questions. You sent for me, Master Judah?
Yes, Yeracom. I have an important matter to discuss with you.
Yes, Master.
In 5 days, you'll be a freedman. I must say that you served me willingly and well. As a reward, I shall give you 10 gold pieces so that you can start life anew.
Well, what about my wife and child?
I shall set them free, too.
What will become of them?
You will take care of them. You will do as all of us do. You will make your own way as an honorable Israelite.
I want to stay here with you. I want to remain your slave.
My slave?
I would stay with you, so would my wife. We're happy here.
You cannot stay here.
Why not, Master?
Because it is against our law. No slave can serve more than 6 years. After that, the law requires that he must be set free.
I waive the law. I volunteer to remain your slave. There's no law against volunteering.
There will be no discussion about this. In 5 days, you will take your family and leave my home. That is final.
But, Master...
There's nothing more to say. You leave in 5 days. Zilla, come here.
Yeracom has forbidden me to speak to him.
Yeracom is fetching water. I'm still your master. I order you to speak to me. Now, sit down, Zilla. I want to talk to you.
Yes, Master.
Do you want your son to grow up as a slave?
No, Master, I don't.
Then why do you agree with your husband and want to remain as my slaves?
Is that what he told you, Master?
Yes, he said you were both happy here and that you would both prefer to remain as slaves in my household.
I never said that. I think that being a slave is unclean.
Tomorrow, you and your husband, whether he likes it or not, will be free people. I'm sure that in a short time he'll be very happy that he received his freedom. I've arranged for a new tent to be set up for your family so that you will have a place to live.
Oh, thank you, Master. Thank you.
You can stop calling me Master. You're no longer my slave.
On the following day, as soon as the dawn came up, Judah ordered Yerakam to remove all his belongings. Although Yerakam pleaded and begged, Judah would not relent. When all of Yerakam's belongings were outside, Judah spoke these words before a large multitude of people.
Yerakam, you are hereby acquitted of your bondage to me. You have served me for 6 full years, and according to the law, you are now a freedman to go and come as you please. Now take your wife and child and your belongings and leave my household.
I will not leave.
You must leave. I do not want you. There stand your wife and child. I give them their freedom, too. Take them to the new tent I have set up for you.
I will not leave. Yerakam.
I order you to go.
I won't go.
Help me get him away.
Don't come near me. I'll do harm to anyone who touches me. He has lost his mind.
There will be no fighting before my house. We will call the judges. Sound the horn and cymbals.
It is Moses. It is Moses himself. Moses. Be quiet, everyone.
What troubles the peace here? Great teacher, this man Yerakam was my slave. He has served me for 6 years. And now, according to the law, I am setting him and his family free. But he will not leave. He wishes to remain a slave to me.
I love my master.
Thou wouldst stay with him? Yes, Moses. Thou canst not see this red thoroughfare of freedom which we built from bloody Pharaoh land, across the Red Sea, across the desert, across the beastliness of men, across the centuries. Thou canst not see it?
I see nothing.
Neither canst thou see that man cannot be an animal in the field, that his destiny is that he must be free or he perishes. Nor canst thou see that he is the only being in creation that was meant to stand upright with dignity, that God never meant for him to be a slave. Thou canst not see this?
I want to serve my master, Judah.
Your only master is God.
I don't want to be free.
Dost thou know that it is as wrong to deprive oneself of one's own freedom as it is to deprive oneself of one's life?
I know nothing.
Out of all this fire and fury and ordeal of our liberation from Egypt, thou hast learned naught. Thou hast darkened thy mind, for thou wouldst know nothing. Thou hast blinded thyself, for thou seest nothing, and thou hast depraved thy human soul before God and man. Thou demandest to live like a beast of burden, to crawl on all fours like an animal. Thy demand is granted, Yerakam. Henceforth art thou released from the company of free men. Let an awl be brought to me, a sharp one, and let it be heated until it be red hot. Let 2 witnesses step forward. Judah, thou art acquitted before the Lord and before Israel. It is not in thy power or mine to set this slave free, for he has the soul of a parasite. He cannot live unto himself. Therefore take thou this lowly menial to the doorpost of thy house.
Now, great teacher?
Now, before all the congregation. Is the awl prepared?
Here's the awl.
Take thou the awl, Judah, quickly, while it still be hot, and pierce the lobe of his right ear.
Yes, Moses. It is done.
Yerakam is now thy slave for life, and all shall know him by the mark on his ear. Here will thy slave remain for 3 days and 3 nights, so that every free man and woman who passes might spit before him. Let it be inscribed in the heart of the congregation that we can never countenance slavery, for it is against our laws and against the law of God. For man was not created in the image of man, in the image of God was he created. Children of Israel, this man is no longer one of us. He is an alien slave. Let each one of you step forward and despise him.
This man who has dishonored humanity.
The first to step forward was Zillah, holding her son in her arms. And before the crowd, before Moses and before Judah, she spoke.
I am lowly born, Yerachim, but even I am no slave, nor will I allow our son to grow up in slavery. I know you now, Yerachim. You're an ignorant sluggard, full of fear and beastliness. I am afraid of you no longer, for I am a free woman, and you are but a brute. Like Moses, like the children of Israel, I denounce you and everything you betoken.
Listen, children of Israel. Listen once again to the law. If thou buy a slave, 6 years he shall serve, and in the 7th he shall go free. And so saith the Lord, for slavery is an abomination before the Lord, and therefore it is an abomination before us.
If you would like a copy of today's script, please send your name and address with 10 cents to cover the cost of postage and handling to The Eternal Light, 3080 Broadway, New York 27, New York. And now we take pleasure in presenting Rabbi Morris N. Kurtzer of the Park Avenue Synagogue in New York City. Rabbi Kurtzer.
The tragedy of slavery, man's domination over his fellow man, has 3 distinct phases. There is, in the first place, the tragedy of suffering that is born of oppression. On Passover Eve, we eat bitter herbs because the Egyptians embittered the lives of our ancestors. They made their lives bitter in hard labor, in mortar and brick, as the biblical narrative tells us. But above and beyond the tragedy of oppression is the effect of slavery upon the oppressor himself. You cannot dominate your fellow man and retain your own soul. The taskmaster inevitably suffers from moral corrosion and spiritual degradation. Slavery was a disaster not only for the Israelites who bore the yoke, it was also a tragedy for the Egyptian taskmasters. The modern tyrant as well as the ancient oppressor inexorably forfeits his own soul. But the greatest evil which slavery engenders is that portrayed in the story we heard today. It is a tragedy of the slave who loves his shackles, who clings with all his might to the security of slavery. We can put our finger on the spiritual crisis of our day in this conflict that seared the soul of the slave Yerachim. His was not an easy choice. He loved freedom, yet he yearned for physical security. He craved economic security, security for his old age. He was sorely tempted to purchase that security at the price of his own liberty. Totalitarianism, whether to the right or the left, is not simply a disease of society. It is actually man's yielding up his liberty for the sake of a real or an imaginary security. And so as we approach this season of Passover, this feast of liberation, we are reminded of the true nature of liberty. It is not enough to be free. We must want freedom. We must love freedom desperately so that nothing else matters. I shall never forget the dramatic portrayal on the movie screen of the life of Emile Zola. The scene when the prisoner Alfred Dreyfus, after many years of life in the dark dungeon of Devil's Island, is told that he is free to leave the prison. The gates are opened. He blinks uncomfortably at the bright lights of day. He begins to walk slowly from the gates, and almost involuntarily his steps move in a circle so that he is back to the very gates of the prison. Woe to any man who is not his own master, but sadder by far is the plight of him who possesses not the spiritual resources to make proper use of his freedom. The forthcoming festival of Passover brings to man a thrilling insight into the meaning of liberty. Free men are not simply liberated men. They are self-liberating human beings who, while they look to a Moses for guidance, for inspiration, and for leadership, yet it is the Moses within themselves through which they must ultimately seek their own destiny and their own fulfillment.
Thank you, Rabbi Kurtzer. Eternal Light drama today, The Slave, was written by Sigmund Miller and presented in commemoration of Passover. The music was composed by Morris Momorsky and conducted by Milton Katins. Cantor David Putterman sang the liturgical introduction. Free time to present the Eternal Light is made available by the National Broadcasting Company and its affiliated independent stations. This weekly program is presented under the auspices of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America.
Remember to hear Phil Harris and Alice Faye tonight on NBC.
Children of Israel, that they bring unto thee pure oil olive, beaten for the light, to cause the lamps to burn continually in the tabernacle of the congregation. And it shall be a statute forever in your generations.
The Eternal Light. The National Broadcasting Company and its affiliated independent stations make free time available to present The Eternal Light, a program which comes to you under the auspices of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. Today's program, One Little Nannygoat, was written by Morton Wishengrad.
A little nanny goat, his mother's little kid. And this is a history of all the things he did.
In fact, you might go so far as to say that this is a musical documentary history of the place of the kid in Jewish folklore. This is the season of the singing of the Passover Chad Gadyo, one little nannygoat, playful and young, which my father had bought for the price of a song. And along came a cat and ate up the goat, the one little nannygoat, playful and young, which my father had bought for the price of a song. Each Each year, when the Passover Freedom Festival comes round, the children sing this song. Tall children, small children, old children, young children, children with gray beards who sing bass, and children up to here who pipe a treble. Everyone sings.
Chad Gad Yor is an Aramaic song,
scholar,
which is sung at the conclusion of the Seder service on the first 2 nights of Passover.
Very enlightening.
It contains 10 cumulative rhymes and resembles the English house that Jack built, the French La petite fourmi qui allait à Jérusalem, and the German Es schickt der Herr den Jokel aus.
Our scholar is one of the variety described in the Talmud as a donkey carrying books. The first thing to catch such a scholar's eye is naturally the obvious.
The song describes a nanny goat, which my father bought for 2 zuzim. Along came a cat and ate the goat. A dog bit the cat, a stick beat the dog, a fire burnt the stick, water drenched the fire, an ox drank the water, a butcher slaughtered the ox, the angel of death killed the butcher, and then God came and slew the angel of death.
Thank you, scholar. Now, you sing the Chad Gad Yor.
Me? Mm-hmm. I can't sing. I'm tone deaf. However, I will explain to you the deeper meaning of Chad Gad Yor.
There is an old proverb which says that one fool can throw a stone into a pile of garbage, and 100 wise men will spend a year looking for it.
Chad Gad Yor is an allegory. The kid symbolizes Israel. God is the father. The 2 pieces of money are Moses and Aaron, who buy the kid from Egypt. The cat is Assyria, the first to conquer Israel. The dog
This
is
a very pretty interpretation, and bears the approval of generations of commentators. However, a commentator is essentially someone who has stopped singing. For example, the German Philipp Nicodemus Lebrecht, in the year 1731, published a hostile commentary on our Little Nannygoat, bearing the following title. This is only the title.
Chad Gad Yor, ein Zicklein. Das ist ein merkwürdiges Rätsel aus der jüdischen Osterliturgie, welches in sich begreift die Begebenheiten und Schicksale des jüdischen Volkes, so sie von Ausgang Ägypti an bis auf die Zukunft ihres noch täglich zu erwartenden Messias darunter verstehen.
Chad Gad Yor, Chad Gad Yor.
Very fortunately, in the year 1731, the Jews of the Ukraine and the Baltic provinces of Russia were paying absolutely no attention to German scholarship. Instead, they were singing a Slavic version of Chad Gad Yor. The words are almost the same. I will tell you a little story. Come listen, young and old. For the old, the story is an allegory. For the young, it is merely a jest. Once there was an evil tomcat who had no pity. This tomcat was hungry and therefore ferocious, and so he devoured the little nannygoat. And so to the end.
Расскажу я вам сказочку, послушай, старый млад. Для старших очень не потеха для ребят. Chad Gad Yor, Chad Gad Yor. Тут был ближохин картлихой, жалости не знал. Он жаден били голодали, козочку сожрал. Козочку, беланочку, наш куш на руку пил. 2 гривен наличными на рынке заплатил. Chad Gad Yor, Chad Gad Yor.
Now, you might be tempted to ask, why all this to-do about a goat? Well, here's our scholar with some questions of his own.
What animal formed an important part of Palestinian husbandry?
The goat.
Mm-hmm. The flesh and the milk of what animal were staples of food?
The goat.
The hair of what animal was woven into curtains and tent covers?
The goat.
And the skin of what animal was used for bottles? Exactly. You cannot pick up the Bible without finding the goat. It was a scapegoat, which on the Day of Atonement carried away the sins of the people to Azazel. And the beginning of the Hebrew dietary laws is found in the prohibition against seething the kid in its mother's milk. The goat is the basis of many things.
But not love.
You are wrong. Behold, thou art fair, my love. Behold, thou art fair. Thine eyes are as doves behind thy veil. Thy hair is as a flock of goats that trail down from Mount Gilead. The Song of Songs.
What else?
The books of Hebrew prophecy are filled with nostalgia for former days, when the young men of Israel were shepherds who kept their flocks against the hills. They gloried in the simple life. They dwelt in tents or in primitive booths. Thousands of years later, in the ghettos of Europe, men and women opened the ancient book and yearned for the days of Mishpat, days of righteousness and judgment. And so they glorified the Feast of Tabernacles. And a ghetto mother singing to her little baby, saying, "Under little Jacob's cradle plays a snow-white kid. The little kid went to market to trade in raisins and almonds. But my little Jacob, he will not trade. He will study Torah." Yearning for her child was never for material success. Throughout the rest of Europe, mothers prayed that their children would become lords and ladies, great warriors. But behind the walls of the ghetto, a mother sang in still another version of the same song, "The little kid will be a trader in raisins and almonds. But little Jacob, you know the best of all trades, the study of Torah. Study and become a writer of books, and you will become a good man and a pious man." Whatever tricks of sentiment memory may play, existence in the ghetto was mean and debasing. Thus, when outbreaks of violence were added to that of virtual prison existence, the ghetto dwellers broke away. Hundreds of the most venturesome went once more to the promised land. But they went to disappointment. They came expecting milk and honey. Instead, they found the reality of erosion and the desolation of malarial swamps. The land was bare and forbidding. a sick, neglected land, as sick and neglected and as deeply in need of comfort as the pioneers who came to her. And so a curious thing happened. The pioneers redeemed the land, and they in turn were redeemed by the land.
In those first days, they worked from sunrise to sunset, and then dropped where they were in exhaustion. But the work was healing, and strength came. And for this new season of strength, poets like Chaim Nachman Bialik returned to the pastoral image and put down a few verses of poetry to entertain the children of pioneers.
When my father came back from the fair, he brought me a little playmate, a friend. Guess what it was? It was a kid, a nannygoat, a kid of kids. My kid is young, my kid is small, froth whiter than snow is his fleece. It came up and gazed at me, my dearest little kid. Come, we will make a treaty between us. You will be my friend, and I'll never let you out of my sight, my dearest little kid. And when down we go into the valley, we'll dance together always. You will skip upon the mountains light as a gazelle, my dearest little kid.
To the words of Bialik, the Israeli composer Nachum Nadi wrote a melody.
The poet Kamatson returned to the book of Genesis for his inspiration, and the composer Pugachev wrote a melody. To the fountain came a little kid, a little white kid. Whence do you come, little kid? For answer it said, from Hauran. Is Laban the son of Bethuel well? Are Jacob and Rachel well? For answer the kid said, they are well.
On the day we call Arbor Day, which is the 15th day of the month Shvat, the children of the land of Israel celebrate a special holiday. They had come to a barren place. The cedars of Lebanon had been cut down. The myrtle, the sandalwood, the olive trees had been given over to ruin. And so the children brought seedlings of poplar and cedar and cypress. They paraded out of the old cities and the new frontier settlements into the deserts and the barren places. They planted their seedlings, and they named the day Chamisho Osor Bishvat, the New Year's Day of the trees. Once in olden times, the land had been fertile, and white lamb and black kid had played together. Somehow the children knew that one day soon there would be another growth of green things in Eretz Yisrael, and that white lamb and black kid, their bells tinkling around their necks, would play on green meadows between green trees.
צריים אל מעיין רצו לשתות מים אחד לבן שני שחור עם טלטלי אוזניים המנים מצלצלים על צווארי ידיים אל המעיין רצו הדרים אל המעיין רצו הדרים ישבו לארץ הרועים רגע קטלנוע, פת בשמן תואמים וזהב תפוח, רוצו שופבים, השמחה כותרת, הביתה עוד משאבים, הנה בא הערב, לי, רנן חלילי, לי, רנן חלילי.
This being the season of Passover, we return again to our one little nanny-goat, playful and young, which my father bought for the price of a song.
Chad Gadyo, there's a bin above Israel, do say Chad Gadyo. There was a little nanny-goat, his mother's little kid. And this was a history of all the things he did. Hagadyo, is a pin of Israel, do say Hagadyo. Yassa shun Rabbi Yavla Gadya de Zabin Abba Bisrael who say Chad Gadya.
Beosso kalbo benotach leshun Rabbi Yavla Gadya de Zabin Abba Bisrael who say Chad Gadya.
ושוחט לרחמו, ושוחט לשוחט, ושוחט לסורו, ושוחט למאיו, וחבל לנורו, ושרף לפוטרו, וכל לחלבו, ושחט לשונרו, וכל לגדיו, וזפינה בו בזריזוס וחגדיו.
Now, as you recall, the Chad Gadyo allegory, like the English house that Jack built, is told in cumulative rhymes. In the Maurice Samuel's translation, which we've used, a middle verse goes,
And along came an ox and drank up the water, which had drenched the fire, which had burned the stick, which had whacked the dog, which had bitten the cat, which had eaten the goat, the one little nanny goat, playful and young, which my father had bought for the price of a song.
Like many old children's songs and fairy tales, the emphasis is a grim one, even if the melody itself is gay. Perhaps by way of protest against the succession of punishment and the rather morbid descent into the grave, the modern Palestinian composer Gorochov has written a new Chad Gadyo,
It is a song which expresses the buoyancy and the optimism of pioneers. In this song, a shepherd plays his flute on a lonely hilltop. His only companion is a little nanny-goat. A dog comes wagging his tail. "I'll guard the little nanny-goat," the dog says. A cat joins them. "I promise to live in peace with all of you," declares the cat. Then the fire comes to warm the companions. The stick cries out, "Don't let me rot away. Take me up. Use me to help build a house for you and your companions." And then deep from the parched earth is heard the wailing call of water. "Please bring me up. Let me work for all of you."
Al Gevaram, al Rosh Hateh, Khalil Roe Shamech Halel. Khalil Roe Shamech Halel, Mizmor Chadash LeYisrael. Vela Roe Rak Ohel Bat, Di Gedi Echad. Vela Roe Rak Ohel Bat, Velo Rak Di Gedi Echad. Chad Gadia, Chad Gadia. Agadia, Agadia.
Kafatu vahatul bilel panu gamli makom batel. Panu gamli makom batel miyaw lo eshabe batel. Anu hashnayim pechad bechaypet lechatul nirbat. Anu hashnayim pechad bechaypet lechatul nirbat. Agadia.
אז בקלבון רץ מיילל, פנו גם לי מקום בתל. פנו גם לי מקום בתל, הם לא אשב אני בתל. אנו מרולת אחד, בחפץ לכלבון נכפת. אנו שלושתם הם פחד, בחפץ לכלבון נכפת. חד גדיה, חד גדיה, חד גדיה, חד גדיה.
ואש יצא ממעפל, יהי נאור בחום בתל. יהי נאור בחום בתל, לתלות לתלות ולבשל. אנו בזמר פחד, גמור גם חום הנה בגד. אנו בזמר פחד, גמור גם חום הנה בגד. חד גדיה, חד גדיה, חד גדיה, חד גדיה.
בזרם מים זחקה, יצא זנק על יד ההר.
בזרם מים על היד ההר. אנו כולם בפה אחד, ברוך הבא הנה בגד. אנו כולם בפה אחד, ברוך הבא הנה בגד.
חד גדיה, חד גדיה, חד גדיה, חד גדיה.
If you would like a copy of today's script, please send your name and address with 10 cents to cover the cost of postage and handling to the Eternal Light, 3080 Broadway, New York 27, New York. Our Eternal Light drama today, One Little Nannygoat, was written by Morton Wishengrad. The music was arranged by Morris Momorsky and conducted by Milton Cadence. Marta Schlama and cantor Robert Siegel were the soloists. Judith K. Eisenstein served as musical consultant on this script. Featured as the scholar was Martin Wolfson, and Alexander Scorbing was the narrator. The production was under the direction of Frank Tapp. free time to present The Eternal Light is made available by the National Broadcasting Company and its affiliated independent stations. This weekly program is presented under the auspices of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. This is NBC, the National Broadcasting Company.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Command the children of Israel that they bring unto thee pure oil olive, beaten for the light, to cause the lamps to burn continually in the tabernacle of the congregation. And it shall be a statute forever in your generations.
The Eternal Light. The National Broadcasting Company and its affiliated independent stations make free time available to present The Eternal Light, a program which comes to you under the auspices of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. Today's program, Out of Darkness, was written by Morton Wishengrad.
This is a story to be told from the slopes of Mount Scopus. To reach Jerusalem, you must go up from the plains below. And to reach Mount Scopus, you must go up from Jerusalem. Perhaps you will ask, why should anyone wish to go higher than Jerusalem? I will tell you. On Mount Scopus there stands a university and a hospital. And even if the way is barred by landmines and the sniper's bullet, men must nevertheless go up toward learning and toward mercy.
Dr. Yaski.
Yes, nurse?
The stretcher cases have all been loaded.
Everyone inside the buses?
Yes, Doctor.
60 seconds, then.
Yes, sir. 1 more minute. 1 more minute. 1 more minute. 1 more minute.
The time was 9:30 a.m. The date was April 13th, 1948, a Tuesday. The convoy had formed, and it was ready to proceed.
Attention, please. The Haganah Scout car goes first. Dr. Yaski's ambulance follows us. The rest of you will maintain your present positions. Shalom.
Shalom. Convoy. 10 vehicles. 1 scout car, 4 ambulances, 2 hospital buses, 3 medical supply trucks. Cargo, food, drugs, personnel.
Keep in line.
The personnel is important. A handful of Haganah soldiers, patients, laboratory workers, students, nurses, doctors. Quite a number of doctors. But one doctor especially. Dr. Chaim Yaski, medical director of Hadassah Hospital. April 13th, 1948. A convoy going out of Jerusalem, up toward a university, up toward a hospital. By what design does a doctor ride an ambulance on the Scopus Road? The design for Chaim Yasky began in Odessa, in the province of Bessarabia. The year was 1919, and Chaim Yasky went to the medical college to say goodbye to his professor of ophthalmology.
Yasky, it's only a few more months. At least wait until you receive your degree.
What for, Professor? I'll only be arrested again.
Doesn't a diploma mean anything to you?
A great deal.
Well, then stay. Final examinations are a matter of weeks. You'll do well, Yasky. You'll do very well. No, eh?
My wife and I are sailing for Palestine.
I don't know. I've misunderstood you. I took you for a practical man. You're behaving like a romantic adolescent.
You haven't misunderstood me. I'm doing a practical thing.
Palestine?
Yes. Here, my classmates reproach me for being a Jew. You, Professor, you forgive me for it. My father, on the other hand, insists it's a great merit. I don't want to be reproached, I don't want to be forgiven, and I don't want to be praised for the way I was born. It seems to me that there, people will take it for granted and make no fuss about it. Goodbye, sir. I'll send you a postal card.
A design for traveling on the Scopus Road. Prerequisite for sitting in an ambulance that follows a scout car. Oh, there are many prerequisites. To leave the land where you are born, and to come into a new land as an immigrant. To take a job, any job.
The position, Yasky, is a fine one. Sanitary inspector of the gathering of refuse in the Arab city of Jaffa.
You mean I'm a garbage collector? All right.
Of course it's all right. This is how you cleanse a land. You work hard.
I want some chemicals for disinfectant.
You want 1,000 times a week, you want. Hoses, carts, chemicals, deodorants. Yasky, garbage stinks, and you can't change it. You're fired.
Your wife supports you by giving French lessons. You borrow from your relatives to go to the medical school at Geneva. You receive a diploma in ophthalmology.
They say there are fine opportunities for eye doctors in England, America, and Brazil. But, well...
So you return to Palestine. It's now November 1921. You have no money. But there's trachoma in Palestine, the terrible granulation of the eyelids, the epidemic scarification of the cornea. Palestine is also an opportunity. And so you go to an eye clinic in the city of Haifa. A carpenter is putting up a new sign.
The Hadassah Eye Clinic.
How does it look, mister?
Looks all right.
It's a society of American ladies. Americans. You know what an American man is like?
Yes.
Well, an American woman is twice.
Twice what?
Just twice. If you want to know what I mean, go inside. There's a lady inside by the name of Henrietta Zold. You'll see. Just twice.
Sitting in the first ambulance on April 13, 1948. Perhaps Chaim Yasky remembered. Perhaps he remembered many things. How he went through a door.
You are Miss Henrietta Zold?
Yes?
I was told that you need medical assistance.
We need everything.
My name is Yasky. I'm a doctor. My specialty is the eye. I can begin now.
Sit down, Dr. Yasky. Are you always so direct?
It saves time.
Then I will also be direct.
Please.
We can't pay wages that amount to anything.
My wife teaches French and English. She has 2 pupils.
The little we can afford to pay, we can't even pay punctually.
If it will make it simpler, Miss Zold, consider me a volunteer.
There's no advantage in that, Dr. Yasky.
But there is. You can't fire a volunteer.
I'm glad to know you, Dr. Yasky, because I also believe that the heart must lead and the feet must follow.
And so this is how you pay for a trip on the Scopus Road. You volunteer your brain and your heart. And so from the beginning, Chaim Yasky made his contribution.
Notice the large number of small elevations on the greatly thickened conjunctive. This raspberry effect is characteristic of the papillary form of trachoma.
And Henrietta Zold also taught Chaim Yasky. She taught...
Neither to cringe, nor to blame, nor to complain, but to meet a people's needs through a people's own efforts.
It was a fair exchange. Wisdom for wisdom. Dr. Chaim Yasky and the fight against trachoma. Synonyms. By 1924, the public health fight had grown, and Chaim Yosky had grown.
Miss Old will see you now.
Yosky was the director of the Department of Ophthalmology of Hadassah Hospital in Tel Aviv. But he was an impatient man.
Miss Old, we've been lucky. No trachoma in the cities, but in the settlements of Judea, it's as bad as it always was.
What do you want to do?
I want to take a look for myself. Nearly 50% of the rural Arab population is half blind with the disease.
We have no funds for large-scale investigation.
I'll go myself.
How?
Horse, donkey, mule, doesn't matter.
A medical circuit rider.
All right. They say you can't begin a housing program without tearing down slums. Well, maybe I say that you can't build this land without doing something about the human slums. Maybe... Well...
Go on, Dr. Yosky.
I'm making a speech.
Go on.
There's something about this land that calls for clear eyes.
Very well. Chaim Yosky, I'm a rabbi's daughter. There's a verse in Isaiah. And Lebanon shall be turned into a fruitful field, and in that day shall the deaf hear the words of a book, and the eyes of the blind shall see out of obscurity and out of darkness.
On April 13, 1948, a man named Yosky traveled the Scopus Road going up toward learning and toward mercy. But in April 1924, a man named Yosky followed the design of his history astride the saddle of a donkey, and this also was preparation for the Scopus Road. For wherever Chaim Yosky went, he left behind him a control center in the war against darkness and sightlessness. He ventured into Arab districts where no stranger was welcome. He was a practical man. He carried a revolver. But it was not the revolver which gave him immunity. It was what he took out of his black satchel. Roller forceps, a small mirror on a metal disc, a box of spherical lenses, a syringe, curved scissors, an iris hook, eyelid retractors, sulfate of copper sticks.
Salam alaikum. Salam alaikum.
What do you want?
I'm a doctor. How many children in your village?
30.
How many children with red eyes that run over with a thick green matter?
20.
How many children with eyes that are granular, like a frog's spawn?
Another 5.
Bring the children to me.
You will hurt them.
Yes, but I shall also make them well.
Why?
I'm a doctor. We do not ask who the sick one is. We ask why he is sick. Then we help him.
Yosef! Yosef is my own son. His eyes are red and running over with the green matter, like you say.
Don't be afraid, Yosef. Has he brothers and sisters?
He got 4 brothers, 2 sisters.
What is that rag in his hand?
For his eyes.
Burn it.
It's a good rag. His brothers use it, too.
Burn it. This is soap. From now on, you will see that his hands are always clean, that he will not touch anyone with his hands. Now tell him to come here.
I do not wish him to.
Look at your own eyes. They are scarred over and cloudy. Yosef can have clear eyes.
To point gun and shoot straight?
Eyes are meant for better things.
But the gun?
As you wish.
All right. Yosef, go to the doctor.
Chaim Yosky's work was primarily in the Jewish settlements, but he was able to see the land as a whole, Arab as well as Jew, malaria as well as trachoma, and babies dead with typhus and mothers dead in childhood. And an ancient, holy land waiting to be cleansed and redeemed from desolation and reborn through labor and learning and mercy.
Yerushalayim, Yerushalayim.
The pioneers made their way to Eretz Yisrael. In the steerage of leaky ships, they sailed to the coastal cities. When they went out of the cities to go to the earth, Chaim Yosky went in spirit with them. In 1928, Dr. Yosky was named Assistant Medical Director. In 1931, Medical Director. The pioneers, the Chalutzim, they sang their psalms of toil. They praised God with a gleaming shovel and with a plow that cut a straight furrow. And Chaim Yosky also praised God with a site on Mount Scopus for a great hospital and blueprints for clinics and a greater program of health stations to protect the children of pioneers. This is how you earn the right to travel in a medical convoy from Jerusalem to Mount Scopus. April 13th, 1948 is only a single day, the successor to former days. For instance, there was a day on which Britain found herself at war.
Major, I am instructed to place the services of our entire personnel at the disposal of the Middle East Command.
Thank you, Dr. Yasky. We are deeply grateful.
The Middle East Command had many reasons for gratitude. There was malaria in the Middle East, but not in Palestine. There was bubonic plague and typhus and cholera, but not in Palestine. The hospital and the Hebrew University opened their gates to the physicians of the Eighth Army and trained them. And then the war ended. It ended for everyone else, but not for the land of Israel, and not for the people of Israel.
Dr. Yasky, what is it?
Get away from that window, nurse. Get your head down. The hospital is being fired upon. Nurse, quickly. Go to your patients. Tell your patients to be calm.
There is a venerable document known as the Geneva Convention. It forbids as uncivilized any attack against hospitals, ambulances, and medical personnel. On January 2nd, 1948, Nurse Hannah Gardy was instantly killed by a sniper's bullet. Thereafter, for the next 100 days, there was to be very little calm in the wards and laboratories of a hospital on Mount Scopus. It is difficult to maintain the normal operations of a civilian hospital under conditions of undeclared war.
Doctor, come quickly. The patient in 331, she's gone into premature labor.
It is also somewhat difficult to perform an operation for the removal of a brain tumor when hospital orderlies are racing down the corridors, blood streaming from their faces. Yet, these considerations seem unimportant beside the major difficulties.
Dr. Yasky, we've got to have more heat. Patients are wrapped in blankets.
My cardiacs need 3 tanks of oxygen. I've put in 12 requisitions, Dr. Yasky.
Doctor, my nurses can't tend their patients if the water taps are shut down.
Any other complaints?
There isn't much food left.
Exactly. Not much food, not much water, not much oxygen. Not much of anything. We're on priorities. The operating theaters get heat first. They'll get water first. They'll get oxygen first.
Well, Dr. Yasky, we can't just sit here and pray that convoys get through.
The Mount Scopus Road is under siege. It isn't just a matter of supplies coming through. There are desperately sick and mortally wounded people in Jerusalem. They've got to get to us.
Or else we've got to get to them. Quit Mount Scopus.
That's quite a decision to make, isn't it? This is just a hospital, but that doesn't say what this hospital is, does it? If we have to abandon this hospital, well, I don't want to see it. No. No, I don't.
They still remember how he said that. But Chaim Yasky was not merely the administrator of a hospital. He was the chief public health officer of Eretz Yisrael. He was the man with a plan for a great new medical college. He was a dreamer who knew how to fix his ladder firmly upon the solid, practical ground in order to climb upward. And all the dreams were contained within the physical framework of the hospital. On April 2nd, 1948, he dictated a letter to America. He spoke slowly, heavily, for in a way he was speaking of death.
We will hang on for as long as humanly possible, and for as long as we can offer the patients the essential medical services. That's all for now. I want to go out.
Chaim Yasky closed the door of his office. He went into the garden of the hospital. In May, the marigolds would blossom. But it was not the month of May. In June, the dark roses would smolder along the vine. And in July, the scent of jasmine would lie upon Mount Scopus like the blessing of the high priest in the Temple of Solomon. But it was only April 2nd, and spring had come very late. There was nothing growing in the garden, except a shadow on a wall. April 2nd. And on April 13th, a convoy would depart from Jerusalem to climb upward. It is 9:30 a.m., Tuesday morning, April 13th, 1948. The 10 vehicles of the convoy, their sides plainly showing the hospital insignia of the Red Star of David, have passed Nablus Road and Salvin Road. Sheikh Yara, where the Grand Mufti lived, is a moment away. Then there is left only the short half-mile to Scopus between Antonius' house on the left and a pillbox on the right. It was all perfectly safe. In Jerusalem, an officer had said to Dr. Yasky,
"The Scopus Road is clear."
You are certain?
Yes, Doctor.
We're bringing food, medical supplies, doctors, nurses, and patients. We've got to be certain.
I said the road was clear.
Yes, of course you did say so. I beg your pardon.
This was sufficient assurance, wasn't it? Besides, a representative of the International Red Cross had made an appeal to both sides to observe the provisions of the Geneva Convention and refrain from attack on medical personnel.
Monsieur, our people have always respected the Geneva Convention, but I call to your attention 25 violations against our hospital buses and ambulances in the last 2 months. However, I accept your assurance that we can transport our personnel and our patients without fear.
9:30 a.m. Convoy. Doctors, nurses, laboratory technicians, students, professors, patients. Convoy on the Scopus Road, mounting toward a hill of learning and mercy. And in that day shall the deaf hear the words of a book, and the eyes of the blind shall see out of obscurity and out of darkness. The scout car in front. The ambulances, the buses, the trucks behind. 9:37 a.m. The crossroads of Ramallah on the Scopus Road. 9:38. In sight of the pillbox. The ambush was prepared and waiting. A landmine had exploded under the leading scout car. The first 4 vehicles were trapped. The scout car, KIBM Yasky's ambulance, 2 busloads of nurses and doctors and students. In the ambulance, trapped immediately behind the scout car, was KIBM Yasky, his wife, Dr. J.M. Bromberg, Dr. Z.M. Polishuk, and patients, some of them desperately wounded stretcher cases.
Dr. Yasky, are you all right?
A slight wound in the foot. How are you back there?
All right so far. That was a good shot to come through such a narrow slit in the armor of the ambulance.
Thus, I wonder if among the Arabs in the ambush there could be a young man named Yusuf.
A ring of rifle fire, machine gun fire, mortar shells.
10 a.m.
An unremitting spray of death.
11 a.m.
There was added now the sound of guns.
12 noon.
In the pillbox, 100 yards from the ambush, an officer was surveying the engagement with impartial detachment.
1 p.m.
At 2 p.m., KIBM Yasky looked back toward the buses behind. There was a new sound.
Keep away from the windows, nurse. Don't look back.
What is it, Dr. Yasky?
They are attacking the buses with flamethrowers.
Burnt offerings unto the Lord upon Mount Scopus. They died. They were murdered. 75 doctors, nurses, laboratory technicians, university professors, students, patients. Not ordinary men and women. Dr. Leonid Dolzhansky, internationally famous cancer research scientist. Dr. Moshe Ben David, executive director of the Hebrew University. The heads of the medical departments. The heads of the laboratories. 75 men and women who had aspired to the mountain of the Lord, whereon justice and peace are met together, and truth rises out of the ground. 75 dead. 76.
Dr. Yasky.
The bullet had gone through Chaim Yasky's liver. Chaim, a word which means life. They carried him gently to the driver's seat. And Chaim Yasky, in the 51st year of his life, and the 30th year of his service, nodded his head in resignation.
Shalom.
And went into the land of obscurity and thick darkness. They gathered the dead that night, and the reporters met the living who had come forth from a place in hell.
It's an awful thing to be congratulated on being alive.
She wiped her face.
I couldn't pick better people to die with. I would rather be alive with them.
The simple stories begin with birth, they end with death. But this is not a simple story. And the Chaim Yaskis of Eretz Yisrael do not die easily, nor do they remain dead. For whatever their origins, they came into a land which transfigured them. They stood in the footsteps of sages and prophets, and they were ennobled. A hospital stands upon a hill. Mercy still endures. The doctors and the nurses of Hadassah Hospital are dispersed throughout a holy land according to a plan conceived by a man named Yasky. And we in America, we look eastward across a space of ocean and a distance of air, and we are not put to shame.
If you would like a copy of today's script, please send your name and address with 10 cents to cover the cost of postage and handling to The Eternal Light, 3080 Broadway, New York 27, New York. Our Eternal Light drama today, Out of Darkness, was written by Morton Wishengrad. The music was composed by Morris Pomorsky and conducted by Milton Catons. Cantor Robert H. Siegel sang the liturgical introduction. Featured as Dr. Yosky was Peter Capell, and Norman Rose was the narrator. The production was under the direction of Frank Papp. Free time to present The Eternal Light is made available by the National Broadcasting Company and its affiliated independent stations. This weekly program is presented under the auspices of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. This is NBC, the National Broadcasting Company.
Shema Yisrael.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Command the children of Israel that they bring unto thee pure oil olive, beaten for the light, to cause the lamps to burn continually in the tabernacle of the congregation. And it shall be a statute forever in your generations.
The Eternal Light. The National Broadcasting Company and its affiliated independent stations make free time available to present The Eternal Light, a program which comes to you under the auspices of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. Today's program, Portrait of Dedication, was written by Peter Lyon.
Genocide. Noun. From the Greek genos, meaning race or tribe, plus the suffix side from the Latin meaning to kill. Genocide. Which is to say, the destruction of a human group, racial, ethnic, religious, or national, by slaughter, starvation, sterilization, compulsory abortion, mass kidnapping, or similar violent means. Genocide. On December 9, 1948, it was stigmatized by the United Nations as a crime. And why not? Hasn't it always been a crime to kill people? That would seem logical, wouldn't it? But no, such mass killing has not always been considered a crime. For our civilization has in the past accepted it as legitimate, sometimes necessary, sometimes even quite moral. But every now and then there grows up a human being who sees where all the rest of us are blind, who is the only man in the parade who is marching in step, who alone is sane, so that we are all of us driven to call him crazy. Today we shall tell you the story of one such man. The man whose life has been one struggle to make the rest of us agree that to destroy a group of human beings is a crime. And we have not yet agreed. A boy sits curled up in a comfortable chair in his home near Warsaw. He is reading a stirring romantic tale called Quo Vadis, and as he reads, his eyes open wide with an astonished curiosity. At length he puts the book aside and goes to seek his mother.
Mother, are you busy? In a moment, dear. What is it?
Mother, if a man kills another man, the policeman comes to arrest him. Isn't it so?
Yes, that's so, Raphael.
But...
Why do you ask, dear?
Well, the book I'm reading.
Quo Vadis? Yes. What?
Well, in this book, the story tells how they took the Christians, in Rome this is. They took the Christians and they threw them into an arena to be killed by lions.
Yes, Raphael.
But wasn't this a bad thing to do? Wasn't it wrong?
It was very wrong, dear.
But then...
You wonder why, if this was wrong, people could sit in the seats around the arena and look on, even applaud, is that it?
Yes.
You're right, Raphael. The thing they did in Rome to the Christians was very wrong. And what made it most evil was that the people looked on. For as long as people look on while such a thing is done, and do not raise their hands against it, for that long the thing will go unpunished.
They do not throw people to lions to be eaten today.
No, dear. They no longer throw people to lions.
Today, if a man is killed by another man, he is arrested?
Well...
Well, isn't he arrested today?
Yes, dear. Today he is arrested.
The boy was relieved. He was a sensitive youngster. When he studied history, he lived it. He lived in Carthage when the Romans destroyed that seaport town and slaughtered all its inhabitants just because they were Carthaginians. He read of the massacre on the eve of St. Bartholomew's in France, and his eyes filled with tears. And he looked for the logic in such killings. Or if not the logic, at least for the reason.
Huguenots? Well, the Huguenots were a group in France who wished to worship their God in their own way, Raphael.
And for this they were killed?
Yes, dear. For this they were killed.
Those who killed, they thought they were doing a good thing, didn't they? A very moral thing.
Yes, I imagine they did.
I wonder if they felt their God would be proud of them for killing people who did not worship him.
If they did not feel so, they would not be able to kill.
Yes. Still...
Yes, dear?
It is very difficult to decide what is good and moral.
Wise men have considered such questions for many centuries, dear. You have plenty of time before you to read what they have written or to decide for yourself.
No wise man can write that it is good or moral to kill others, no matter what the excuse. In war, perhaps it is necessary to kill, to defend yourself. But this was not war.
No. No, it was not in war, and it was not right.
The boy grew up, went to the university at Lvov, and studied hard. He was a young man with an exceptional head on his shoulders. He chose to specialize in the law. The law deals with what is right and what is wrong, with what is a crime and what is not. And the questions which had come to him when he was a boy were still with him. Of course, he didn't lack for reminders. It was in the early 20s, when the young man was still a student, that a few hundred miles to the west one day, an Armenian approached a Turk on the streets of Berlin. The Turk, who had been a minister of the interior in his country before coming to Berlin, was Talat Pasha. The Armenian had a gun in his hand, which he raised and pointed at the Turk. If he said anything at all, it was probably no more than,
"This is for vengeance."
vengeance. The Armenian was a member of a society sworn to avenge the slaughter by the Turks of 1,200,000 Armenians. He was arrested, sent to jail, held for trial. And in Poland, in his university, Raphael considered the motive for the assassination and followed the course of the trial. With his professors, he discussed the case.
I understand he tried to get the German authorities to arrest Talat Pasha.
Of course, there is no law under which he could have been arrested. What had he done?
He was responsible for the death of more than 1 million human beings, slaughtered for no reason. But there is no law.
Let me give you an example, Lemkin. A man owns some chickens. He decides to kill them. He kills them. Why not? They are his.
The Armenians were not chickens, Professor. They were human beings.
Moreover, if you attempt to stop the man from killing his chickens, you open yourself up to the charge of trespass. Quite apart from the fact that you are meddling in an affair which is none of your business.
The chickens are one thing, Professor.
Similarly, if the government of Poland had presumed to interfere with the internal affairs of Turkey, not only would we have been meddling in an affair which was none of our concern, but we should...
I know. Violating Turkish sovereignty.
Exactly.
Forget that. Who is the greater criminal? The Turk who is responsible for the death of more than 1 million? Or the Armenian who kills one man for revenge?
The Armenian, for he broke the law. The Turk did not.
The Turk broke no law, the Armenian did, and the world is mad. Perhaps you've forgotten precisely how demented the rest of us were, so I will remind you. The German court which tried the Armenian was successful in letting the Armenian off without a sentence, for they were able to convince the Armenian that he should plead insanity. The young law student Raphael Lemkin went on in his studies. He took his doctorate. He was appointed secretary to the Polish Court of Appeals. He was charged with the task of drafting a code of jurisprudence for his country. His career stretched out before him, honorable and successful. But still, the question of the crime that was no crime nagged at him. In Paris, in the middle 20s, on a crowded street one day, a man named Schwarzbart approached a Ukrainian exile and killed the Ukrainian. Schwarzbart's act was to revenge a pogrom which this Ukrainian had led against some Russian Jews. The Ukrainian had gone free. Schwarzbart was arrested, tried, and finally, after he had pleaded insanity, let off with a suspended sentence. And in Poland, young Raphael Lemkin coined a phrase to describe the two political assassinations.
The beautiful crimes. That's what they were. Beautiful crimes.
An associate reminded him.
Now, wait a minute.
There's nothing right or just or beautiful about what those men did. They killed. They are neither of them God to strike down an evil man.
A beautiful crime.
Two wrongs, you know, they still don't make a right.
Those men, they were the instruments of a higher law.
They had no right. If they were acting as instruments for a higher law, I will say only that it's a law that no court recognizes.
But it will be recognized. It will be recognized.
And now Dr. Lemkin set about writing articles, starting discussions, lecturing, always on this question of the crime which was legal and sanctified. Because he had risen to a post of importance in his country, his voice was heard. Because he was a lawyer, and also a sensible man, he realized that in order to fight this crime, he would have to appeal not to the court of any nation, but to the court of international law. 1933. And Dr. Lemkin went to Madrid to the International Conference for the Unification of Criminal Law in order to submit a draft of an international convention
to outlaw internationally the destruction of religious, national, racial, and other human groups.
Lemkin had heard the arguments against his idea before in Poland. Now he heard the objections all over again in many languages.
But there's no such thing as exterminating whole groups of people.
He reminded them of the most recent instance in that very year, 1933, when the Iraqians had slaughtered 1,000 Christian Assyrians, wiped out a whole tribe, men, women, and children.
Who is this man?
The precocious lawyer from Poland.
I never heard of him.
Coming around here to tell us about international law.
What young Lemkin didn't seem to realize, for after all he was the only man in the parade who was in step, was that international law can take care of only three things: piracy on the high seas, slavery, and the drug traffic. The older, wiser lawyers tried to explain this to him.
My dear fellow, you're simply barking up a tree that doesn't exist.
That's it exactly. How can you draft a law against something which in the first place doesn't exist? And in the second place, if it did exist, there's no crime anyway.
It's interference with internal affairs.
That was in 1933. The year, you will remember, when Hitler took power in Germany. In those days, Raphael Lemkin had risen to the post of public prosecutor in Warsaw. He didn't retain his job. He found that the newspapers of his native city were delightedly attacking him, his ideas, and his crusade. And so one day he told his mother,
"I've resigned my post." You don't seem astonished.
No, dear. I've seen this coming. What goes on in your mind is not precisely a mystery to me.
Do you think I did wrong to resign?
No. If you can't work effectively...
And I can't, not while I'm being called a fool every day in the papers.
Exactly. And I don't imagine that the attacks are fortuitous. I imagine they were all planned.
So, now I shall write more articles.
There is something strange about being the only man with eyes in the country of the blind. It is as though you heard a man announce, "Poverty is a crime, it must be outlawed." And you stop to think and you realize, yes, maybe this is true, but after all, we have always had poverty. It's necessary. Maybe it's even good, for only under the goat of poverty will men work. Such nonsense is no more foolish than the nonsense against which Lemkin directed his articles. And in 1936, he fell desperately sick of pneumonia, and a strange thing happened. In the hospital outside his room, his physician talked about it to his mother.
It's delirium, of course.
Oh, if his fever would only go down. He's not strong now.
What puzzles me is...
Yes, Doctor?
Well, he keeps talking, only it's more than talking.
Yes, I know. I've listened.
It's a harangue, always in German. I don't understand German too well.
I understand what he's saying.
Is it all nonsense?
Not exactly, I don't think.
What is it he's saying?
He's talking to some German officers.
German officers?
Army officers. Stormtroop officers.
But I don't...
He's imploring them not to kill people.
Very strange forms, the forms that delirium will take. I remember one...
He's begging them not to kill me.
Oh, why? That is very curious. Isn't it?
Yes. Or, of course, it may also be remarkable foresight.
Well, they had called Dr. Lemkin a visionary while they were calling him a fool. It's only right, within the irony of things, that he should have been permitted his prevision in a moment of delirium. And in 1939, the German officers moved east into Poland, and they sacked and pillaged and killed. And they burned down the house of Raphael Lemkin's family in the suburbs of Warsaw. And his mother they killed. And Raphael Lemkin fought in Warsaw and fought in the forests around Warsaw, was wounded by shrapnel fire, learned how much sustenance there is to be had from a diet of potatoes and roots, and at length made his way to the Baltic and by small boat to Sweden and to safety. Now, it happened during the war that the great powers agreed that the war makers, the Nazis, had committed great crimes against the peoples of the world. A covenant was reached and confirmed by the United States, the Soviet Union, Great Britain, and France, agreeing that war criminals should be prosecuted and punished. Was it a crime that 6 million Jews had been destroyed? Raphael Lemkin thought it was. He was in America at war's end and was assigned to advise the legal staff of the United States War Department at Nuremberg. But there they told him...
It's going to be very difficult to charge them with, what did you call it?
Genocide.
Yes, genocide. You see, Doctor, the trouble is, there is
no law against it, I know.
More important, there was no law against it at the time the crimes were permitted, if they are crimes.
Yes.
You know as well as I do what the legal mind thinks about ex post facto laws, Doctor.
I know.
Look, I'm as anxious as you are to see these Nazis get the book thrown at them. Tell you what I think you should do. You know that conference of lawyers that's going on in England?
At Cambridge, yes.
That's the one. There are 300 of the world's most conservative lawyers there. If they were to agree on a resolution that genocide is a crime we can charge these Nazis with, then we'll be able to include it in the Bill of Particulars. Otherwise...
I think it's a good idea.
Say, are you feeling okay?
Just a little tired, I think.
Yeah. You look pretty ragged. Do you think you could manage to fly to England and talk to this conference?
I can manage.
I'll get your plane reservations fixed up for you.
Fine. The quicker, the better.
Yes, Raphael Lemkin was a little tired. He flew from Nuremberg to Croydon Airfield outside London, and as he was about to leave the plane, he collapsed. At the hospital, the English doctor smiled and told him,
You know, Professor, I think you must be trying to break all altitude records with your blood pressure. It's over 200.
I'm not trying to break a record, Doctor.
Well, after you've been in bed here for 2 or 3 weeks, I think you'll be all right. Rest is what you need chiefly.
Doctor, I promise you, if I stay in bed here for more than a day, my blood pressure will go up still higher.
What's that?
I have an appointment to make a speech in Cambridge day after tomorrow.
Oh, no, that's quite out of the question.
It's absolutely necessary. And I promise you that if I stay here in bed, my blood pressure will be above 250. I'm leaving for Cambridge tomorrow, and that's that.
At Cambridge, Raphael Lemkin spoke on the first day of the lawyers' conference. He pleaded his case in the morning, and the lawyers listened attentively. Afterward, there was some interest in what he had to say.
Genocide. The word's all wrong, you know. What's that? Well, I mean to say the etymology is wrong. You coined a word that has roots in 2 different languages, Greek and Roman. Well, it doesn't ring true.
If we're discussing philology, I will cite you many examples of words which come from 2 different languages. But I'm discussing the mass destruction
of... the word weren't half Greek and half Latin.
Well, now, you know, it's very important when you're coining a word to keep the grammarians happy. At Cambridge, the lawyers did nothing except talk about what they might do tomorrow. Lemkin flew to Paris. The peace conference was about to get underway. He spoke to a member of the American delegation.
Yes. Trouble is, we're so busy trying to make sense with the Russians, Lemkin, that I just don't think we'll be able to find time to put this genocide business on the agenda. After all, it's a peace conference, you know, not a...
But listen, I'm
Can't
sure
you sympathize with my problem? How can we undertake a side issue like this when our hands are so full with the job of trying to sign a peace treaty?
To a member of the French delegation.
As a man, Lemkin, I could not agree with you more heartily, but I am a split personality. I'm also a diplomat. And as a diplomat...
To a member of the Ethiopian delegation.
But we are such a small country. Who will listen to us? And besides, they will say, but you are the victims. You are not objective. You have an extra grind.
He talked to the members of one nation's delegation after another's. At length, when he was admitted for an appointment, he noticed that the man he talked to looked at him with cold eyes, looked through him into space, so that he felt he really wasn't there at all. Raphael Lemkin stopped talking. He went home to his hotel, and one morning he found he could not get up. It would be romantic to be able to report that the member of some delegation heard that Dr. Raphael Lemkin was sick in bed, lying with a great world weariness alone in his hotel. The facts are of themselves even more interesting. The facts are that nobody knew he was there, and nobody cared very much. So, with his blood pressure approaching 250, Raphael Lemkin called for a doctor and was taken to the hospital with no fanfare whatsoever in order to have a breakdown. And it happened as he lay in bed. He turned on the radio by his bedside.
And the session of the United Nations General Assembly has been called for New York City in the United States of America and will convene in 6 weeks. The agenda for the session is now in process of formation and will be...
Nurse! Nurse!
Professor, you shouldn't make so much noise.
Nurse, I want you to get hold of the doctor and tell him I'm checking out of the hospital.
Oh, now, really, Professor...
No arguments. I'm feeling better. I'm going back to the United States. Tell the doctor. Fix up all the papers for my release from the hospital. Fetch my clothes for me.
Raphael Lemkin was permitted to leave the hospital on the condition that he would not fly to America, but would go by boat. He arrived in this country when there were only a few days left to include new items on the agenda of the General Assembly session. It was a journey that had begun in Warsaw, had taken him to Madrid, to Paris and Berlin, back to Warsaw, to Stockholm, New York, Washington, Nuremberg, London, Cambridge, and Paris. Now he was back in New York again. Genocide was put on the agenda. 3 nations, Panama, Cuba, and India, sponsored the resolution. It was at length adopted by the Assembly as a convention. So what? Well, so the United Nations has now approved a convention, a new international law, the fruition of one man's life work. Only, not yet. It's not a law yet. It requires ratification by the Senates of 20 nations before the world will have agreed that genocide is a crime, before the rest of us will have opened our eyes to the fact that to destroy by murder, mass kidnapping, sterilization, starvation, and forced abortion or other similar violent means is a crime, before the rest of us will have understood that we must change in order to get into step, before the rest of us can say that we are sane. None of the United Nations has yet ratified this convention. It occurs to me that the first nation so to ratify will qualify, however belatedly, as honorable. Today, we have told you the story of a man whose life has been one struggle to make the rest of us agree that to destroy a group of human beings is a crime. And we have not yet agreed.
If you would like a copy of today's script, please send your name and address with 10 cents to cover the cost of postage and handling to The Eternal Light, 3080 Broadway, New York 27, New York. And now we take pleasure in presenting Judge Joseph Sherbo of the Supreme Bench of Baltimore City, speaking to you from Baltimore. Judge Sherbo.
Now that the Genocide Convention is a reality and is being submitted to the nations of the world for ratification, it is difficult for us to believe that only a short few months ago, weary yet undaunted Raphael Lemkin was waging the battle of genocide single-handedly in the face of universal indifference. And yet it is so. Only yesterday, the most ancient of all crimes, that of mass murder, was considered no crime at all. Like poverty and slavery, we took it for granted as part of the pattern of civilization. Over 1 million Christians perished in the Ottoman Empire and the Balkans. Countless Christian Assyrians were exterminated in Iraq. 6 million Jews and several million Poles and Slavs were wiped out by Hitler. And only within the past few years, over 1 million Muslims of Pakistan and an untold number of Hindus were victims of genocide. And the civilized world looked on and said, no law was broken, and to punish the murderers would be meddling in affairs which are of no concern to us. The time has come for us to heighten our understanding, broaden our vision, strengthen our faith. The battle against genocide is not yet won. The senates or parliaments of 20 nations, members of the United Nations, must ratify the Genocide Convention before it becomes international law. Not one has yet done so, but already the dedicated spirit of Raphael Lemkin has succeeded in winning world recognition for what he called the higher law, and historians of tomorrow will undoubtedly record this achievement as one of the greatest spiritual victories in the history of civilization.
Our Eternal Light drama today, Portrait of Dedication, was written by Peter Lyon. The music was composed by Morris Momorsky and conducted by Milton Cadens. Cantor Robert Siegel sang the liturgical introduction. Featured as Lemkin was Joe DeSantis. The narrator was Alex Scorby. The production was under the direction of Frank Papp. Free time to present the Eternal Light is made available by the National Broadcasting Company and its affiliated independent stations. This weekly program is presented under the auspices of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. This is NBC, the National Broadcasting Company.